This woman finally conceived the baby after so many barren years. However, 3 days later, the doctors discovered something really terrible during a scan and immediately called for help. Jo Powell had been tending to her garden that morning when she noticed a subtle difference in her body. Something felt off, though she couldn't quite put her finger on it. She carried on with her gardening chores, trying to shake off the feeling of unease that lingered within her. However, as that morning progressed, Jo found herself struggling to complete her task, suddenly feeling unwell and weighed down. She decided to seek solace with her husband, Richard. Richard was relaxing in the living room when Jo approached him, expressing her discomfort and heaviness. A sudden thought crossed Jo's mind: could she be pregnant at last? It seemed improbable, given their past negative experiences with pregnancy strip tests. But despite the doubts and uncertainties, Jo's intuition persisted. She couldn't shake off the feeling that this time might be different. Richard, on the other hand, remained skeptical and nonchalant, dismissing the idea as he lounged on the sofa. Was hers just wishful thinking, or could it be a reality? With a mix of hope and apprehension, she decided to take another strip test, just like she had done numerous times before. With a neutral mindset, Jo retreated to the restroom, retrieved the strip, and conducted the test. The moments felt agonizing as she stared at the test, waiting for the familiar single line indicating a negative result. To Jo's astonishment, the outcome was far from expected. Instead of a single line or no lines at all, she was met with a sight that left her breathless. 2 distinct colored lines appeared on the strip. Shock overwhelmed her, tears welling up in her eyes as the realization sank in. Meanwhile, Richard, still lounging in the living room, was jolted from his relaxed state by a piercing scream echoing from the restroom. Concerned and alarmed, he hurried to Jo's side, fearing the worst and hoping for her safety. Upon entering the restroom, Richard was met with a sight that puzzled him: Jo standing there wide-eyed and speechless, her hands covering her mouth in disbelief. He immediately sought answers, asking her what had happened and why she had screamed. But she was too shocked to respond coherently. Jo's silence in response to Richard's inquiries prompted him to glance at the strip she held, instantly recognizing the significance of the 2 colored lines. His eyes widened in astonishment, mirroring Jo's shock. They exchanged glances filled with disbelief, a silent communication passing between them, acknowledging that their lives were about to change dramatically. They were going to be parents. Their joy knew no bounds as they shared the sweetest and warmest embrace, reveling in the realization of their impending parenthood. However, amidst the excitement, a sense of cautious optimism prevailed. They couldn't fully trust the home strip test and decided to confirm the news at the hospital. It felt like a miracle, a long-awaited answer to their prayers, and they were determined to be certain before celebrating further. So, Jo and Richard made their way to the hospital for a professional pregnancy test. The doctor welcomed them with a reassuring smile, understanding the significance of this moment for the couple. As the doctor conducted the tests and the couple anxiously awaited the results, their hearts raced with hope and anticipation. The prospect of having a positive outcome seemed surreal yet hopeful, a dream they had both cherished for so long. Finally, the moment arrived when the doctor was ready to discuss the results. Jo and Richard watched his expression intently, their hearts almost pounding out of their chests with suspense. The doctor's words hung in the air. "You are a few weeks pregnant," he confirmed. Joy and relief washed over them, the weight of uncertainty lifting as they embraced the reality of their baby on the way. The news echoed through the hospital corridors, reaching the ears of medical staff and other patients. The shared joy and celebration were palpable as everyone joined in the couple's happiness, moved by the miracle and the profound moment of new life beginning. Everybody knew how hard Joe and Richard Powell had tried for a baby. Despite numerous attempts to conceive, they had faced disappointment each time, leaving a void in their lives. And as the years passed, their hopes of parenthood seemed to drift further away. The sight of their neighbors' kids running to catch the school bus, waving goodbye to their parents, served as a poignant reminder of their own empty home. It had pained them deeply to witness these everyday scenes, knowing that they were yet to experience the joy of parenthood. There had been moments when Richard would return home to find Jo in tears, her longing for a child palpable in her sorrow. He would hold her close, comforting her and reassuring her that their time would come. Despite the challenges they faced, as Jo neared menopause, the fear of never having a child intensified. The realization that time was slipping away weighed heavily on her, casting a shadow of uncertainty over their future. Richard's support and encouragement were constant, but the reality of their situation was becoming harder to ignore. Eventually, they came to terms with the fact that biological parenthood might not be in their cards. The pain was profound, but they began to explore other options, such as adoption, as a means to fulfill their desire for a family. Just when they had resigned themselves to the idea of adoption, fate intervened in the most unexpected way. The morning Jo discovered the positive results on the test strip, it was as if a ray of hope had broken through the clouds of doubt and disappointment. As they returned home that day, the realization of their impending parenthood sank in. Their lives had taken an unexpected turn, and they embraced the prospect of becoming parents with open hearts and eager anticipation. However, just 3 days later, their newfound happiness would be overshadowed by a devastating discovery that would shatter their hearts into a million pieces. Jo had noticed a lump on her breast, and this sudden discovery made fear creep into her heart. Despite her apprehension, she decided to confide in her husband. Richard's initial shock mirrored Jo's fear as they grappled with the possibility of what the lump could mean. Despite the uncertainty, they both resolved to stay positive and not give in to fear or pessimism. Still, they knew they couldn't ignore the lump on Jo's breast. They immediately sought medical advice and drove together to Nottingham City Hospital, their hearts heavy with worry and concern. Jo struggled to hold back her tears, trying her best to remain positive despite the looming uncertainty. The delight they had felt just days ago upon confirming her pregnancy now turned into despair as they awaited the diagnosis. The doctor conducted tests and examined the lump. As he studied the results of the scans on the screen, his expression turned grim, and he swiftly left the room to call for backup. Jo and Richard were terrified. The doctor's reluctance to deliver the news on his own could only mean one thing: he had discovered something bad. Dr. Carson felt devastated when his colleagues confirmed the suspicions he had shared in their joy during the confirmation of Jo's pregnancy. But now faced the daunting task of delivering grim test results. With a heavy heart, he revealed that Jo had breast cancer, a sentence that shattered the couple's world in an instant. Richard and Jo were stunned into silence by the devastating diagnosis, the room filled with a heavy silence as they grappled with the enormity of what they had just been told. The possibility of losing their unborn child and the looming threat of losing Joe to breast cancer hung over them like a dark cloud. Dr. Carson laid out the options they had, explaining that Joe might need to begin chemotherapy to save her own life, even if it meant sacrificing the life of their unborn child. The weight of this decision hung heavily in the air, and Joe couldn't contain her emotions as she burst into sobs, seeking solace in Richard's comforting embrace. The thought of losing both her baby and battling cancer was overwhelming. But amidst her tears, Joe made a decision that shocked both Dr. Carson and Richard. With unwavering determination, she declared that she wouldn't give up on her baby despite the medical advice and the risks involved. Joe refused to start treatments until later in her pregnancy. Her motherly instincts kicked in fiercely, driving her to protect the life growing inside her at all costs. Richard was torn between the fear of losing both his child and his beloved wife. Joe's decision was a risky gamble that could potentially cost her life, but her resolve was unwavering. Back at home, Richard attempted to talk to Joe, seeking reassurance that they were making the right choice. As they discussed the situation, he began to understand the depth of Joe's conviction. She explained that after years of longing for a baby, she couldn't bear the thought of sacrificing their miracle child. Despite the risks, she was willing to face the challenges ahead, holding on to the hope that bringing a life into the world would be worth the sacrifice. At another visit to the hospital, Dr. Carson reiterated the gravity of Joe's situation. He explained that if she chose to continue with her pregnancy, she would have to delay chemotherapy until a later stage when the baby might have a chance of surviving the treatment. However, due to Joe's still being in the early stages of pregnancy, immediate chemotherapy wasn't an option. Understanding the risks involved, the doctors urged Joe to consider terminating the pregnancy. They explained that her cancer was exacerbated by hormonal changes during pregnancy, and continuing with it could worsen her condition. Despite the medical advice and the dire consequences, Joe remained resolute. She refused to sacrifice her baby's life for her own, firmly holding on to the hope of bringing their child into the world. The weight of Joe's decision would later fall heavily on Richard's shoulders. Unbeknownst to him at that moment, the consequences of Joe's choice to prioritize her baby's life over her own would unfold in unexpected ways, shaping their journey in ways they couldn't have imagined. Following Joe's insistence, Dr. Carson agreed to postpone her chemotherapy treatment for nearly 6 months. However, he strongly recommended an immediate operation to remove the tumors from her lymph nodes. After much persuasion, Joe consented to the operation at 10 weeks into her pregnancy, choosing to prioritize her baby's safety while addressing her health needs. The surgery to remove the lymph nodes from Joe's breast at just 2 months into her pregnancy brought relief and joy as the baby's heartbeat was heard strong and steady post-surgery. This unexpected positive outcome filled Joe and Richard with renewed optimism as they navigated through this challenging journey. The biggest surprise and joy of their lives arrived when Joe gave birth to their adorable baby boy, whom they named Jake. Dr. Carlson couldn't contain his emotions as he witnessed the arrival of Jake into the world, knowing the significance of this moment for the couple. However, the challenges were far from over. While Richard reveled in his newfound fatherhood role, caring for Jake, Joe faced a battle for her life in the weeks following her son's birth. As she underwent mastectomy and intensive cancer treatment, it was a trying time for both Richard and Joe, who navigated through the uncertainties and hardships. Despite the difficulties, each time Richard looked at his son, he found solace and reassurance. Seeing Jake thrive filled them with hope and optimism, believing that Joe would also overcome her struggles and join him in the joy of parenthood. With each passing day, Joe displayed remarkable strength and determination, surprising Richard and everyone around her as she steadily improved. Eventually, the day arrived when she was discharged from the hospital, marking a significant milestone in their journey. Despite the curveball that life had thrown at them, Joe and Richard emerged victorious. They embraced the joy of parenthood with open arms, cherishing every moment with their miracle baby, Jake. Their joy knew no bounds when follow-up tests revealed that Joe had defeated cancer completely. No further treatments were needed, and it felt like a miracle for their family. With Jake's arrival and Joe's recovery, they finally became a happy and complete family, celebrating the strength, resilience, and love that brought them through the toughest of times.